I'm Seamus. Thank you so much for coming.
You've got a great cause worth fighting for. I couldn't wait to get here. That said, I expected, well, more people?
So far, there's only the two of us.
But we're highly motivated.
Well, it's a start.
Some people I knew already were dear friends of mine, like little gray cells, and just my stupid opinion.
Lots of interesting things. This is absolutely abominable, and the RCMP are really in the shit here, and they know it.
Hi, I'm not really sure what I'm doing here, but I think it's time that I needed to speak up.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Something you watch on TV, horror movie, you shut it off a good bit. We can't shut this off. Every time we close our eyes, the horror movie turns on. So I know for myself, when I close my eyes and go try to go to bed, picture my parents being shot.
Trying to piece together a story that seems so unbelievable.
Let's have a look at this. I'm going to pause it periodically, and I'm going to try and not lose my shit because I was really angry. Really angry. I'm getting really pissed now. I'll preface this by saying I'm strongly urging all of the victims in this, the victims' families, to launch a class action lawsuit against the RCMP. And I would just love to have the RCMP under discovery. I have a lot of questions, and I'm sure a lawyer would too.
Mounted police and their stories. Stories of their courage. Stories of their lives filled with hazard, romance, and adventure. The RCMP story this week. Gunslinger.
My goodness, how many windows do I have? Oh, oops, sorry. Phone ringing. Going to text this person back. Just give me one moment. How's everybody doing? Okay, we got 13 of you back. We're going to watch a little video. Actually, we can just watch the video while I text. How's that? You don't have to sit around and wait. Now, there's big stories, and corruption is very deep within the RCMP, has been going on for a very long time. Connections may be bigger than some people understand. So we did some stuff about those of you who watched that video about IIO and CERT connections. Lots of the same names keep popping up, of course, the power couples and things we've talked about a lot in the past, whether that be, I think I did the video on, that's relevant. Maybe we should play that too. Some of that, anyways. we'll just kind of wing it. That's the best way I can do this. Missed the last live here. Hopefully, I saw, who was that posted right there at the end? One of our good family members was in here, as in family, the extended Discord family, Nova Scotia investigative crew was in here and said, oh, I just got here in time, but now I'm leaving. Now you're signing off. Too bad. I just noticed that comment at the last minute. Hopefully they'll roll in here too. No middle name for Evelyn. Hello. So who do we have? Let's say hello to everybody. Of course, we've got Blue Nose. Truth and All is back. Dave says that's quick. Loretta. Linda McDonald. Oh no. Truth and All. Sunday. Sunday's a good day. Nikki Lewis. Caper, Snipper, Snippy, Pinky, Snippy, Pinky. My apologies. Snippy, Pinky. I know who you are, I think. You like to spell words? S-E-W. Down by the bay. Space Explorer. Okay, there we go. I was going to text you. So Tara's in here. Now, howdy. And we've got Marion. And Glenn. First notification in a couple of streams. I'm pissed. Sorry about that. Not meaning to piss you off, Glenn. On my way. Becca A. Michael does have he does have an article. I think, what is it, May 5th or something like that. I remember that article. But Evelyn's missing. Evelyn's tree. Still curious about how Michael knows all this stuff. 69. Very good with the internet, I guess. Not your fault. Google, raveling you. That's a word I haven't heard in a long time. All right. So, this is a video I'm going to play. I downloaded it and clipped it. I got lots of little videos that I have unlisted. And so I've kind of laid some of the groundwork here for you, whether you go back to Campbell. I've discussed it a lot. So those of you who don't know, pretty much all of my videos, save the ones that they've been deleting, which is unfortunate, that are on this channel are all devoted to Nova Scotia. In fact, the entire channel has become, because we're helping, which initially started out our friend Tara, and have grown to be quite a wonderful family, the Discord, with 300 and some odd people in it, and really kind of just making waves. So we'll just keep doing that, right? Getting answers for all the families who are wonderful, and that's why we're here. And, by extension, helping out other people and exposing corruption. Let's deal with Blundell, German, and Paulson, and Galliford. The one name here, obviously, you must recognize Galliford, which, I don't know, Jesus, how long ago was that? God, talked about a lot, right? Since the beginning. Somewhere way back at the beginning, maybe I should find that link. We could watch that too, because there is the ties. Campbell. Who is Darren Campbell? 11 months ago. So it's not like we're saying anything that's old or anything. Seems like it just comes out now and it's news. No. Anyway, not to be a piss. All right, so this is 45 minutes, 20 seconds long. Worth the watch. we'll talk about it a little bit more when we come back. So grab yourself a drink. It's not my stuff, so I'm not a sanctimonious. This is not going to be sanctimonious windbag. But they like to hide this video. They tell you videos that get you warmed into the story somewhat, and then they disappear it so off into some corner. CBC could have uploaded this video to their channel, but of course they're on YouTube, but of course they don't. Funny that. I wonder if Jillian will send me a tweet, a private message. Still not following you. All right, let's watch this.
It started as any other undercover operation. 2 experienced RCMP officers, men. A female officer on one of her first undercover assignments. Her job to hang on her colleague's arm, impress the target, help solve a crime. But by the time the night was over, there'd be a new potential crime. The victim, the female officer herself, assaulted, she would later claim, by her RCMP colleague.
I woke up and Rob was all over me. He's kind of a big guy. He had his hands in my clothes, under my clothes.
For years, she refused to tell, until she learned there were more.
She had a very serious allegation of a sexual assault, of having been raped.
First on my plate, we'll be addressing the issue of harassment and sexual harassment in the workplace.
Tonight on the Fifth Estate, the story of 4 women who signed up to serve and protect, who charged Canada's iconic police force with failing to protect them. Good evening, I'm Gillian Findlay. The stories just keep on coming. Women, members of the RCMP, emerging to share difficult, painful stories of harassment and abuse. Some are recent, some stretch back decades. But for insight into how this country's national police force deals with these kinds of allegations, few stories match the one we're about to tell you tonight. The claims were set out in a lawsuit. As you'll hear, the story stretched all the way to RCMP headquarters in Ottawa. But it started in Calgary with a young female officer looking to prove herself in the toughest police rack of all, cover unit. For as long as she can remember, Victoria Cliff dreamed of being a police officer.
I think I probably knew when I was 2 or 3 years old. I mean, I grew up in a policing family. Grandpa, my dad, all of my uncles, and of course, you gather uncles along the way, of course, my dad's friendships and stuff like that, so yeah.
And what is it that appealed to you?
Just the diversity of the work, you know. It was a good job, solid job. My dad loved his work. So, I mean, you want to get into something that you're passionate about. So that's where I went.
Her timing was good. By the late 1980s, women were coming of age in the RCMP. Gone were the days they graduated in skirts and heels. By then, there was an understanding, however grudging in some quarters, that the girls were up to the job. Discrimination and harassment were things Victoria didn't even think about.
I don't know, maybe it was my own ego or my own arrogance, but I never thought it would touch me. I never even considered it would happen. I never saw any of my friends who were policemen treat other female members that way.
Her first posting was in small-town Alberta. She liked the work, but always wondered what it would be like to run with the big boys in Calgary. In particular, the stars of the show, the undercover unit, the UC. One day, the phone rang, At the other end, a constable, Robert Blundell, with an opportunity.
He had contacted me and said that he was working on a UC and knew that I was interested in the program.
The first thing Blundell wanted were photos of Victoria to impress the target of the operation, a suspected murderer. The goal was to earn his confidence, and pretty women would help. Eye candy, they called them, window dressing. Provocative attire was part of the lure, and so was a lot of booze.
Well, I met him at the hotel, and we grabbed some beer, and then we went to the site where we were supposed to meet up with the target. And it was outside of Calgary. When we just hung out there and drank beer and waited for them to show up, and eventually they did.
There was a lot of drinking that went on.
Absolutely, yeah.
That strike you as strange?
I wasn't really paying attention to how much drinking was going on. I guess at the time, I know that we were drinking beer, but I mean, like, I wasn't pounding back beer. I was having a few beers. After that, we went to a licensed establishment and carried on from there.
The hope was the target would reappear at the bar. At least that's what Victoria was told. He never did, but the party continued anyway.
And Sergeant Blundell started buying tequila shots. And I can't even remember how many they kept coming back with them, and I don't drink hard liquor. So when nobody was looking, I was dumping them into a shrub that was in the bar. It was a fig tree or something, I think. And or I just put it down on a table and walk away from it. But I wasn't drinking them.
And he was drinking them?
Yep. Yes.
So this goes on for some time? Yeah?
A couple hours.
Uh-huh. And are you drunk at this point?
You know, I wasn't falling down like totally inebriated, but yeah, I'd had too much to drink. Yeah.
Too much to drink and in no condition to drive home. It didn't matter. She'd been told earlier that a room had been reserved for her at the hotel that night, but that didn't turn out to be true either.
So we get back to the hotel, and Blundell told me that there had been a mix-up, that he couldn't get a room for me. Whatever, the hotel was booked up, and I was just going to crash in his room on a couch. And we went into Blundell's room, and there was no couch.
What did you think?
Well, you know, I didn't really think much of anything, to be quite honest. I mean, it was, so I'm like, well, you know, got to sleep somewhere. So he said, well, we'll just, you know, sleep on half the bed and I'll sleep on the other half. So I went to the washroom, I came back out, he was in bed, I came back out and got, like, I didn't get under the covers, I got on top of the covers, but under the bedspread, and went to sleep.
And then what happened?
Then I woke up and sorry.
That's okay. Take your time.
I woke up and Rob was all over me. He's kind of a big guy. He had his hands in my clothes, under my clothes, and I kept pushing him away, and he persisted. So I started pushing him away again, and he still came back at me.
What was he actually doing to you?
Well, when I woke up, his hand was right between my legs and his fingers were inside of me, and his other hand was up underneath my ribs, and he had a hold of my breast. So I pushed him away and pretended to be asleep at the onset because I thought maybe he'd just stop and leave me alone, and he didn't.
I'm struck because this is 17 years ago now, and yet it still can bring you to tears like this.
Yeah. Nobody expects that from their partner or from their peer. It wasn't expected. It wasn't warranted. I didn't ask for it. I never gave him any indication I was interested in it. It was just out of left field.
Eventually, she says, he fell asleep. But even when she could, she didn't run. She agrees it doesn't make a lot of sense. Today, she puts it down to inexperience, a misguided sense of professionalism.
I never even thought about leaving because we were still to continue the scenario the next day. And we're working on a very serious criminal matter. I mean,
how do you explain that to people? I mean, I know you're a professional, but
I don't know if you can explain that to people, and I've never really tried, quite frankly. It's, I call it, simply you're there to complete a task. That's what your job is. I'll call it dedication to duty or whatever else. I mean, it happened, it stopped. We had very important things to get done the next day. In my mind, they were very important. I don't know what they were in his mind. That's what I thought we were doing.
So what happened the next morning hit like a bombshell. Having worked late into the night, Blundell now told her she hadn't been authorized to be on the undercover operation at all. For everyone's sake, she should just go home and keep quiet. For Victoria, that's when the penny dropped.
I think he just wanted to tag another female member. I don't think it had anything to do with me being on the scenario. I mean, it was never cleared through K Division. I found out later. I was never authorized to be down there. There was no cover team in place. I mean, and all these things in retrospect, I should have known, but I was junior and he was a seasoned member of the RCMP and an operator. I had no idea. But the purpose was to see who he could sleep with.
Her dilemma now was what to do about it. She thought about reporting the assault, but decided she just couldn't.
I was embarrassed. Yeah, I was embarrassed. I didn't want anybody to know. Maybe I let my guard down and I shouldn't have.
did you blame yourself?
Probably, yeah.
For 6 years, she would keep the secret, until the day she discovered she was not alone.
Robert Blundell put his arm around me and whispered in my ear, he said, if I touch you, just go with it. And as we were walking towards the target, he fondled my breast.
In the world of police investigations, this is the big time. Going undercover to befriend criminals and learn their secrets is demanding, dangerous work. The officers who do it, the police equivalent of rock stars.
Did you see it happen? Yeah.
But even today, it's still very much a man's world. Women are often the decoration, and the traditional standards of policing don't always apply.
I think they play by a different set of rules. You know, they have access to drugs, they have access to liquor and alcohol and staging areas and props.
Back in 1994, Constable Christa Carly thought it all sounded pretty exciting. She'd been with the RCMP just 3 years in a rural detachment outside Calgary. And one day, she too got an opportunity.
One of my supervisors, a sergeant at the time, took me into his office and said there's going to be an opportunity to do some window dressing, is what he termed it, to do an undercover operation with some people from Calgary. Would you be interested? And I said, sure, I would love to do it.
The people from Calgary included Constable Robert Blundell. He was a seasoned police officer. Because he worked undercover, it's hard to find a photograph of him. Once again, the team met the target in a scrapyard. And once again, the liquor began to flow. Constable Carly was posing as the girlfriend when the acting got a little too real.
Robert Blundell put his arm around me and whispered in my ear, he said, if I touch you, just go with it. And as we were walking towards the target, he fondled my breast.
And prior to this, did you hear anybody else say, look, we're all play acting here, be prepared, we might have to act in a way that...
No, there was nothing. I was in the scenario. I didn't want to blow the operation. I didn't want to turn around and slap him in the face or turn around and say, get your hands off me. I just basically froze.
Were you surprised?
I was, and it made me feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then it happened again.
It happened again.
Yeah, as another incident where we were talking to the target, he put his hands down the back of my shorts and touched my bottom through my underwear.
What did you think?
And I just felt sick. I just felt humiliated and used and embarrassed, and I never said anything.
Why not?
I didn't want to blow the operation, and I didn't know what to do.
And so she did nothing. They went to the bar and later back to the hotel. It was there Blundell suggested they continue discussing the case upstairs.
He said, why don't you come up to my hotel, come up to the hotel room for a little while? I said, no, I really need to get home. And at that time, I had consumed maybe 6 or 7 beer over the course of the day and in the evening. And I probably shouldn't have been driving a car, but all I could think about was, I want to get in my car. I want to go home. I want to be somewhere safe.
Did you feel unsafe with him?
I did. I had just my sixth sense saying, don't go up there. Don't even think about it.
Her instincts also told her that even though she was a police officer, sworn to uphold the law, there was no way she could report what happened.
I just knew that if I ever said what happened to me, that a floodgate would open. I thought, oh my gosh, I will make so many enemies if I tell them that we were drinking in a police car, that we were drinking during the course of the investigation, that the operators were drinking heavily. I would be highly criticized for doing that. So I was very fearful for coming forward.
The fear that would ensure Constable Carly's and Constable Victoria Cliff's silence would keep other women quiet as well. According to a lawsuit filed years later, Blundell's alleged predatory behavior didn't stop. Another female officer claimed that in 1996, he made unwanted sexual advances towards her, ripping her blouse and grabbing her breasts. A year after that, there was a 4th incident. This time, the allegation was rape. That police officer still won't speak publicly. But according to the lawsuit, the incident started in a familiar way. Her role was to pose as a party girl who Blundell would pick up in order to impress the target. At the end of the evening, the woman admits she returned to Blundell's hotel room for a debrief and another drink. Eventually, she fell asleep. According to her statement of claim, when she awoke, Blundell was sexually assaulting her. She tried pushing him away, but he pushed back, bruising her arm and her breast. The assault continued, she says, until he ejaculated. Like the other 3 women, the officer did not tell. But then after psychological counseling, she decided the silence had to be broken. She filed the formal complaint against Blundell that police would now have to investigate. Calls went out to other women who had worked with him, including Victoria Cliff.
And she said, well, there's an investigation going on, and they want to talk to you. And I said, I'm not interested in talking to them. I just didn't want to deal with it. So the last thing she said to me is, you really need to think about this. So I did start to think about it. And, you know, you wrestle with it for a while, but the bottom line is that you're a police officer and you're paid to do what's moral and right. And how do you go to work every day and interview women who've been sexually assaulted and not have the strength to do it yourself? So, you know, like I said, how do you ask somebody to step forward to say, you know, to bear the most intimate details of an act to the public, and you don't have the guts to do it yourself? Because I knew what the cost was going to be. Yeah. I was pretty sure when I came forward, my career was going to be over.
The women were assured their complaints would be kept confidential, but it only took days, Victoria says, before that promise was broken and the retaliation began.
There was rumors and stories being told about me in different sex acts with different people. It was an all-out smear campaign, I guess is the best way to put it. Rumors, lots of innuendo, just swirling around my work environment all the time.
At the time, Victoria was part of the RCMP's emergency response team, one of only a few women trained as a hostage negotiator. She says once word leaked out that she'd made allegations against Blundell, her assignments dried up.
And I really enjoyed that job. I mean, I went to a call out and sat in a chair in a hallway because they wouldn't utilize me.
Really?
Really.
Because why?
Well, because I came forward with the allegations, I would think. It got to the point where I no longer cared about my job anymore. I had an idealism of what police work was about, what policemen were about, what was moral and what was ethical, and I watched all that go up in smoke.
By the time Christa Carly was convinced to lodge her complaint against Blundell, she was already off on sick leave. She'd had an earlier experience with harassment that she felt the force hadn't taken seriously. That and the stress of the Blundell incident, she says, resulted in the breakup of her marriage.
It was shortly after that that then I started seeking counseling and talking about it. Because if you hold a secret for too long, it eats you up inside. And that's what it did to me.
And the more she thought about it, the more she came to believe that what happened that day in the scrapyard was no accident. So you think you were recruited?
Yeah.
But not necessarily just to do the undercover work?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was all part of his game. I think they just invited me along for the ride in hopes that, you know, that I would sleep with one of them. I think that's what it came down to.
On the strength of the 4 women's stories, Calgary police considered criminal charges against Blundell. Crown Counsel was consulted. Charges were never laid. That left the RCMP's own internal disciplinary process. Initial investigations there substantiated 3 of the claims, meaning they'd now go to an adjudication board, which could, if it decided, punish Blundell, even fire him.
I thought that there would be some discipline, and I thought there would be some repercussions, some accountability. We trusted our employer to step up to the plate and do the right thing.
But even before the adjudication hearings began, another bombshell. 2 of the women mysteriously found themselves targets of investigations. A fellow officer, the same man in both cases, accused them of unbecoming conduct. In Constable Cliff's case, of inappropriate relations with another undercover officer. Was it coincidence that this happened at that time?
Do I think it was a coincidence? Absolutely not. I think it was meant to do exactly what it was trying to do, which was discredit me and ruin my reputation, further ruin my reputation as a police officer.
So that when it came to a hearing, you would not be a credible
Where's my
witness?
credibility now? Yeah. Yeah.
The women were eventually cleared of the charges, but not before the hearings began. The first up was the constable who claimed she'd been raped by Robert Blundell in the hotel room. Under the RCMP Act, 3 senior officers would decide the case. The RCMP appointed the prosecutor. Blundell had a lawyer and a staff association rep. But the women had no official standing at the hearing. If they wanted representation, they'd have to hire their own, Calgary lawyer Angela Byrne.
It was disgusting what happened in that hearing.
For Byrne, the strength of the case was in the numbers and the shockingly similar scenarios. 4 policewomen, the same alleged perpetrator. On the day of the first hearing, she made sure Victoria and one of the other women were in the courtroom ready to testify. But the prosecutor didn't believe that evidence would meet the legal test for admissibility. Byrne still disagrees.
The prosecution didn't involve calling any similar fact evidence. despite the fact that everyone knew that there was similar fact evidence that could be called.
There were 3 other women who had similar complaints.
Very similar.
Against the same officer.
All against the same officer, all involving sexual assaults that took place within or surrounding undercover operations.
And why wasn't that considered to be relevant in this case?
I have no idea. It was unbelievable that you would have that kind of evidence to corroborate this complaint.
Why do you think it didn't happen?
I don't think their allegations were taken seriously. I don't think there was a real desire to get at the truth.
The board started from the position that what happened in the hotel room was not rape, but inappropriate sexual relations. The woman's story that she'd been drunk and Blundell had taken advantage was found to have major discrepancies and factual errors. Blundell's account that they were sober and the sex had been consensual was found to be believable. In its ruling, the board accused the woman of trying to minimize her role in what happened when confronted by her boyfriend. It insisted it was sensitive to the issues of sexual harassment, but we must first believe the constable, and we do not. The board feels she sincerely believes her testimony to be true, but thinks she may be honestly mistaken. The bottom line, Blundell was acquitted. For Victoria, on deck for the next hearing, it was ridiculous.
My personal opinion was it was laughable, and that I had no intention after leaving there to put myself through the same thing. I'm not going to be treated like this. Like this is a joke. Nobody's taking this seriously.
By 2001, allegations that an RCMP undercover officer had sexually assaulted 4 of his female colleagues were working their way through the force's internal disciplinary process. At the first hearing, the officer, Robert Blundell, now a sergeant, was acquitted. The other women bringing charges were devastated.
It was tragic to watch her go through that.
It was her word against his at the end of the day, and they believed him.
He said, she said, yep.
Were you surprised that...
Once again, yes, I was.
Yeah?
You know, I don't know why I kept the perpetual optimism, I guess, to thinking that, once again, good was going to triumph over evil, for lack of a better term. And I kept always thinking that, you know, this is going to change. No, this is going to get better. Somebody's going to step up and make sure that this is going to go right. And it never happened.
By now, the women's confidence in the RCMP to hold Blundell accountable was fading. They weren't impressed with how the force's prosecutor had handled the first hearing, so the 2 women who would face Blundell next wrote a letter to then Deputy Commissioner Beverly Busson, demanding she appoint a new prosecutor. She did, going outside the force and hiring BC lawyer Jennifer McCormick.
They didn't have a lot of confidence in their employer. They were angry, and they were pretty defensive when I first met them.
But as the women worked with McCormick, a veteran criminal lawyer, they came to trust her, just as she came to trust them.
So as you listen to these women's stories, did they strike you as credible?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You didn't doubt what they were telling you?
Not for 1 second. They were just, they were believable. That's all I can say. I mean, I just have to make an assessment of their credibility.
Mm-hmm. But you didn't walk away saying, well, maybe there's exaggeration going on here. Maybe it was consensual.
No. People don't make those kinds of complaints given the environment that they work in. People don't just come forward with those kinds of complaints. They just don't.
With just 3 weeks to prepare, McCormick threw herself into the file and discovered that one of the original charges against Blundell, that he'd recruited Victoria Cliff to work undercover without authorization, had been dropped. Her opening salvo was going to be to get the charge reinstated. She was also pushing to change the sentence if Blundell was found guilty. Not the 10 days docked pay the first prosecutor wanted, but the maximum possible.
I would have been making a submission that he should be terminated from the RCMP.
lose his job.
Yes.
He turfed out. That's how serious it was.
In my view, it was.
She never got the chance. On day 2 of the hearing, Blundell's lawyer approached McCormick. His client wanted to negotiate. She was floored.
This member had adamantly denied each and every allegation that had been made. And in addition to that, I expected him to be quite confident given that he had not been found culpable in respect of the earlier matter.
So you weren't expecting that he was going to plea bargain his way out of it?
Not a chance.
So what did you think when it was put on the table?
I didn't know what to think. I was completely taken aback. But my job is to take instructions from my client.
Now, McCormick's client was actually the deputy commissioner, Bev Bussin. She'd asked for McCormick to be hired. She'd authorized the process against Blundell. The women were on the verge of getting their day in court. But now there was an opportunity for a deal. The next morning, a very senior officer arrived to make sure it happened.
Unbeknownst to just about everyone, Peter German, then an RCMP superintendent, had flown into Calgary. McCormick was preparing to go back into court when she got his call.
I couldn't figure it out. I was stunned, absolutely stunned. And I remember thinking, like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? And I was actually, to be honest with you, angry that he was there.
Why?
Well, because, I was hired presumably for my capabilities and my ability to conduct the matter. And I was doing that.
So what did he tell you? Why was he there?
To get the matter done.
Those were his words.
He wanted it resolved. Like they wanted it resolved.
And by the end of the day, it was. McCormick, who'd been hired to prosecute the allegations against Blundell, says she now felt extraneous to the process. And so did the women.
They were exceptionally unhappy. I can't emphasize that enough. They wanted to have a hearing. They wanted to get in the witness box. They wanted to be heard. They were prepared and they were ready to go. They didn't come there to have this back and forth and to have this resolution forced on them. And that's how they felt.
I was shocked. We were in the middle of an adjudication. We had a prosecutor. We had a defense lawyer. I don't know what the requirement was for him to intervene.
We asked now Deputy Commissioner Peter German for an interview to explain why he intervened. He declined our request. Under his mediation, a statement of facts was agreed. Blundell, who until this point had denied assaulting the women in any way, now admitted to discreditable conduct, touching private areas of Constable Cliff on top of her clothing, and in the case of the other woman, grabbing her breast.
The agreement said that he had touched you, but only with your clothes on.
Yeah, I did have my clothes on, but he wasn't touching me on top of my clothes. Absolutely. And that's why I'm saying it was very minimized.
Did you say anything at the time?
Oh, I was livid. I was absolutely livid when we left there. I couldn't even, I believe there was a group of people standing outside talking, and I couldn't even speak. I was just, wow.
But it didn't matter what she thought. The deal was done. Blundell, who had been on track to become an inspector, was reprimanded, recommended to counseling, and docked 1 day's time off.
It was disappointing, I guess. Is the best way I could put it. I don't know what I expected to happen, but I was very disappointed with what happened.
Disappointed but surprised?
I wasn't surprised by anything at that point. When I walked out of that courtroom, I don't think anything more would have surprised me.
You had a pretty clear understanding of...
It was very clear.
And what was clear? What did you understand?
This was going away, and it was dealt with, and it was a done deal, and nothing was going to change.
It's been 10 years since the RCMP dispensed with Victoria Cliff's allegation of sexual assault, reprimanding the officer she says attacked her and docking him a day's time off. She's still a police officer at a detachment on Vancouver Island, but the journey back to believing in the institution she so proudly joined has been a hard one. In 2003, she and 3 other female officers launched a lawsuit against the RCMP for covering up the assaults and failing to protect them. The list of defendants included all of their bosses, right up to the commissioner at the time, Giuliano Zaccardelli. He flew the women to Ottawa to hear their complaints firsthand.
I do remember part of the conversation was I said, you know, you've got a problem with your force. And he said, it's our force. And I said, not if it's like this, it's not. I want nothing to do with it if it's like this.
The former commissioner declined our request for an interview, so we don't know what he made of the women's claims. We do know he was concerned enough about their lawsuit to order a review of how their cases had been handled internally.
My overall impression was that the way things were managed from investigation to disposition left a fair bit of room for improvement.
Retired RCMP Superintendent Ian Atkins conducted the review. It took months. He interviewed dozens of RCMP members, but his report has never been made public until now. We obtained a copy through access to information. It's far from congratulatory. On the punishment handed out to Sergeant Robert Blundell, Atkins was surprised, especially since after denying the assaults, Blundell later switched his story and cut a deal, admitting sexual attacks happened.
Integrity for a police officer is paramount. If you can't trust your police officers to be honest, then you've got a problem.
You're a former superintendent. Would you want somebody like that in the RCMP?
If I was conducting a hearing and I believed that the officer was dishonest,
and he just admitted to being dishonest,
I would seriously consider dismissal.
You think that's what should have happened?
In this case, probably yes.
So why didn't it? And why at the 11th hour did a senior officer, Superintendent Peter German, get involved in making the deal?
How it was expressed to me by Superintendent German was that this is apparently the first time that Sergeant Blundell had actually admitted to misconduct. And it felt that that was a step forward.
Atkins doesn't dispute German's motivation. He calls him a man of integrity with long experience in adjudication, but he won't say the intervention was appropriate.
It's an unusual intervention. In my history in the RCMP, I'm not aware or that has occurred in the past.
Was it helpful to justice that he did what he did?
The 2 complainants would say absolutely no, it was not helpful to justice. I believe that the outcome was lighter than it should have been. If there are lessons to be learned from dispositions that are given, which is one of the objectives of discipline, so others can learn from others' mistakes, then it probably didn't achieve that objective either. So from that perspective, it probably wasn't beneficial for the administration of justice.
Now, there's something else that came out of the review of that deal that German helped negotiate and the deputy commissioner approved. Atkins discovered that in addition to the 4 women who'd made the initial complaints against Blundell, there were 3 more allegations that he'd had inappropriate sexual relationships. A 4th was uncovered as the review proceeded. We asked the RCMP whatever happened to those new claims. They were investigated, we were told, but in each case were deemed to be unfounded.
Victoria Cliff, who'd never seen the Atkins report until we showed her, was not surprised.
I was aware during the investigation that there was other women, but those women weren't willing to come forward at the time. I mean, you have to remember that there was women I worked with that watched what I was going through, that had absolutely no desire to live through that. And who could blame them?
As much as the RCMP would like to move on, the issue of sexual harassment refuses to go away. Just last month, a woman who'd been one of the force's most recognizable faces came forward with her own allegations.
If I had a dime for every time one of my bosses asked me to sit on his knee, I'd be on a yacht in the Bahamas right now.
As she watched that interview, Christa Carly, who trained with Galliford, knew it was time for others to come forward too. She decided to speak out about her experience with Robert Blundell.
It just broke everything open for me again. I thought, things haven't changed. Here's somebody else that's gone through horrendous harassment, that was a really good police officer, that was a valued spokesperson for the RCMP, and I've got to support her, so that's why I came public.
So enter the RCMP's new commissioner, Robert Paulson.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you. Congratulations.
In his first television interview since getting the job, Paulson made it clear he has no higher priority than tackling harassment, and he's not afraid to come down hard.
I think that Canadians want to be confident, and they want to be reassured by the force's ability in those cases where behavior is outrageous, that's clearly made out, that there are immediate and quick sanctions brought to bear on those offenders. I'm committed to that, and we today agreed, the commanding officers, and I've given instructions to them to go forward and make that live. So that's going to be happening.
So given that, we wondered what he made of the Robert Blundell case. Blundell never did make it to the RCMP's executive ranks as an inspector, but 1 year after admitting sexual assault, he was promoted again.
I know that there's criticism around about his promotion to staff sergeant, but let's face it, that was a significant sanction. I like to think that the Blundell case has been resolved.
The women who brought allegations certainly don't see it as being resolved.
No, fair enough. I get that.
They live with the consequences.
They
still.
do live with the consequences.
Their careers didn't progress in the same way. One of them actually left the force.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fair. But what's not fair is to extrapolate from those facts to the way the force handles harassment. And I think we've got a fairly good record in a large number of discipline cases, and we can do better.
You can do better.
Absolutely, we can do better, and I'm committed to doing better.
But for some of the women, it's too late. They eventually settled their lawsuit with the RCMP, but Constable Christa Carly never did return to work. Her policing career is over. As for Victoria Cliff, there were certainly days she wanted to quit, but she persevered, earning a commendation for training work she did in Bosnia. At one time, she too dreamed of becoming an RCMP commissioned officer. She has yet to make it past the rank of corporal.
If you had a daughter, would you want her to become an RCMP officer if that's where her career aspirations took her?
If we change as an organization, a positive organization, you know what? Yes. Simple answer is yes.
Because you didn't quit. You could have walked away from this.
No, I never could have walked away. I'm not like that. This was something that bound and determined for whatever was going to happen. I was not walking away from this.
Why?
Because I stepped forward to do the right thing, and I wanted to make sure the right thing happened. And I still want to make sure that the right things happen. I mean, not for my daughter, but for whoever's daughter, Why shouldn't she be able to be in the RCMP and not worry about this kind of thing happening to her? I mean, there's lots of things to worry about in the world, but being safe at work amongst your peers is not one of those things.
We, of course, wanted to speak with Robert Blundell, but he too declined our request. Through his lawyer, he sent us this statement. Staff Sergeant Blundell has been a diligent and conscientious officer for 30 years and supervisor to many men and women who have worked with and for him. Stay with us. The Fifth Estate will return.
Okay, so pretty tragic. And, it isn't per se what happens. how do you say this? I don't even know how you say it. The sexual assaults aren't the most traumatizing thing. It's what the force does to the members afterwards. And by extension, I'm hoping people understand that this happens, obviously, if they're going to do it to their own members, they're going to do it to anybody. And this is why they don't give a shit about anybody else out there. The white shirts, when they're to me, they're a rogue organization. They extort people. I've heard a lot of interesting stories over my time doing this stuff. Pretty horrendous. And so, let's look where Christa ended up. And again, I'm trying to do this with all sensitivity as possible because it is really sensitive, and a lot of people, particularly, Jesus, I don't even know how you say it, just have been absolutely traumatized because, I don't think it's, the boob grab per se. If I'm trying to say that in a way, it's not the boob grab that is the one that damages irreparably. It is what they do afterwards to people. So let's look at this. Ex-Mountie, of course, then they want to bury that article or that video way off in the background. Ex-Mountie Christa Carly, who helped bring light to abuse and harassment in the RCMP, has died. Okay. Friends and colleagues stunned after learning former constable took her own life. That's really what happens. This is how bad it gets. Christa Carly came forward to CBC News after her friend, Catherine Galliford, went public about sexual harassment within the RCMP. In subsequent letter, Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale insists 35 incidents of sexual harassment, bullying, co-workers, supervisors. She listed 35 instances. A woman who fought to bring attention to harassment within RCMP has died. Friends and colleagues confirmed that former Constable Christa Carly took her own life on Friday, 53. Carly had been very active in the fight for accountability. She came forward to CBC News about her own experiences for the first time after her troopmate Catherine Galliford went public about sexual harassment in November 2011. She was public about her struggles with post-traumatic stress disorder. And again, probably where is a lot of this arising from? Sadly, from the people that we employ who treat these people like crap. After they come forward and say something legitimate and then treat them like shit. Where are all the women's groups on this stuff? I'd love to see them come out. Oh yes, that's right. Non-state torture. Femicide Observatory. And eventually left the RCMP after 19 years with a medical discharge, turning negatives into positives in a letter to Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale. May 2016, Carly said she had endured 35 incidents of harassment, sexual assault, and bullying by co-workers and superiors. She served with the RCMP in Alberta. Carly tried to restart her career at BC, settling a lawsuit in Alberta, told Goodale, due to my PTSD, I was unable to cope and eventually lost my marriage, my kids, my career. And the stuff I'm looking into now even goes more serious than this. She settled on Vancouver Island. Tory Cliff met Carly during an investigation into assaults committed on them by a senior colleague in Alberta in 2004. Why do the RCMP not want to deal. You remember we did the story the other day about the Surrey 6. What was that, a week ago? Surrey 6 and Robin, right? Which I guess is somehow some of it has got somewhere now. Anyway, moving along from that. The force cares about the white shirts. Again, we're talking about white shirts. There is garbage down below, but the garbage down below is protected by our employees at the top who are shit and running amok. And if you don't believe that they keep files on everybody, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. They will. I could go into, what is it, Webster, Dr. Webster. They break into psychologists' offices to steal files. Yeah, maybe I should play his clip. Is it his clip that they actually caught him red-handed? No. Sorry. I think that's a different one. Psychologists getting caught red-handed, or RCMP officers breaking into psychologists' offices to get the files, confidential files on members. Why? So that they can extort them, so that they can smear them, destroy them. It's horrific how bad this shit goes. But why is it that they're protecting Blundell, aside from the fact that they're garbage? Blundell, very important person in the Mr. Biggs, right? Same thing down there with John Robin. Have to protect that. But now hundreds of cases of homicide are up for retrial potentially because of his illegality, knowing illegality, identified in reports. I'm not making claims that are my own opinion. I'm just repeating. That was a good video. You know, yes, it's a little bit longer than an article, but you're going to get a little bit more of the background. Plus, I'm laying down groundwork for other more serious things to come, right? She all turned all negativity into positivity. Couldn't let her beat her. She made and was making a huge difference, not just for women in RCMP, for everybody, right? I mean, we can do guys. I'm more than happy to go into guys too. But you want to talk about women's rights, women's issues? How about we clean up this shit? Oh no, can't do that. Who pays those groups? Do you remember? Do you remember who pays them? Oh yeah, the same people that pay the RCMP. Oh yeah, who's that? That's you. That's me. Funny this. And then they bury this stuff off in the side. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. It is over and over and over and over. Every few years, recommendations, whether it's this kind of stuff, the sexual harassment. They certified a case. What was it? I'm gonna get phone calls from certain RCMP people here because they're gonna start getting upset. Because they know this stuff much better than I. But I'm just gonna try and give you a little bit without getting to going down the rabbit holes too far. Things like Spiritwood, things like Moncton, things like Marathor, right? Recommendations, we'll do something, or Paulson's up there. Oh yes, we'll deal with sexual harassment. It's the first and foremost thing I'm going to deal with. What are you talking about? You never do anything. Never do anything. And now what do we have? $1 billion lawsuit sitting before us. And they even encourage members now to sue. This is crazy. Somewhere I might have a clip where they're pissed that there aren't more members suing them. This is Looney Loons we're talking about. She was making a huge difference for everybody, for making it a better work environment and ensuring people were held accountable. That was her goal, accountability for the employees. Janet Merlot, there's another one. I mean, these stories are sad. Carly trained as an RCMP officer in 91, graduated with Galford. Merlot was the lead plaintiff in a class action lawsuit, gender-based harassment and sexual abuse within the RCMP. Lawsuit settled for $100 million. They keep doing these ones. You think you'd learn, but you know why they don't learn? Well, that's right. Because you pay. And you never do anything about it. You never stand up, right? We collectively never stand up and say, you as our employees are completely out of line. You're out of line how you treat the families here, deleting their shit, memories. Tara's in here. Tara can attest to, something on her end. Horrific. You don't do that to people. You don't treat them so badly that they're killing themselves, and they kill themselves a lot. It isn't per se they go through a lot of horrific things, but the rates of PTSD within the RCMP are exorbitantly higher than they are in the military, where people are dealing with all kinds of blood and gore during war. But the reason is because they have the added, not that it's a bonus, of how they're treated. You speak up, you ask for help. You don't ever want anything going on your file. Zero, zip, zilch. You don't open your mouth. Otherwise, they come after you. They come after your family. Criminally, they will wreck you all over the place. I do hope to get to a story, and I know that there's a certain somebody, oh, Jesus. There's a few certain somebodies who want some pounds of, they want to be able to say to people, listen, do something about this. You got to speak up. We have to speak up. I don't want to pay for this shit anymore. Get rid of it. One of the, I was trying to find the clip while we were waiting of, and I could see it in my head. It's maybe somebody who, working in the background, those great people who are working in the background to help, will refresh my memory, or possibly one of you, which would be great. Former superintendent, I believe it is, out of, I think he lives in some rural part of Canada, possibly Saskatchewan, possibly rural Ontario, horse farm, calls for the disbandment of the RCMP and a new federal force founded. But again, do we want any of this undercover garbage running around? I don't think so. This is what facilitates this crap, because they push people to become criminals. And how does that mess with your mind? Think about your psyche. If somebody you've got a really good moral compass, you're trying to uphold the law, and your bosses are telling you go and break it. It's really going to mess up your mind. New potential class action lawsuits. Here we go. Yeah, 1.1 billion over bullying and claims was filed against the RCMP last month, claiming 1.1 billion in damages. This was certified now. This has been certified, so it's proceeding. They never learn. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. Marathorpe, Spiritwood, Moncton. Don't think it's going to happen with Nova Scotia? You're out of your mind. Don't fool yourself. They'll do it to their own members. They're going to do it to you. Galford told CBC News she was devastated to learn that Carly had died. You know, Carly had come, and it was too much. What is going on here? Christa was one of my best friends, she said. She was working through PTSD, but I can tell you the last time I spoke with her, she sounded pretty upbeat and happy, but that could have been the fake it until you make it. Sweetest, kindest person you ever met. Indeed, recent posts on social media, Carly wrote about being proud mother. Merlot described Carly in her lifeline, someone who is strong, someone else, for someone else. She was the sweetest, kindest person you ever met, would be cry on her shoulder She would never show any weakness, she said. Merlo and Carly checked in on each other regularly. This is, you got to watch out for each other. You know? Members who speak up have to take care of one another, and because there's so few of them. Takes a lot of balls. She also said recent comments by Commissioner Brenda Lucky that the RCMP is not broken have stunned those who believe that. Also, Brenda Lucky says mats, gym mats are racist. Come on, get out of here. It was like a kick to the belly, Merlo said. People are still suffering. There is no union. Oh, there is now. Yum. Not even going to touch that one. No collective agreement. There's no process within the RCMP to make things better now. Because the RCMP is rogue. They're a completely rogue organization. Rogue. They control politicians. Who do you think does all the investigations into politicians for things like pipelines? Right? Who does all the background checks? Who has all of the info in their O-Drive files? O-Drives. Remember, we've spoken about those. Who has that? Oh, that's right. The RCMP. Do you think they use that information on people? You're goddamn right. They do way more than that. Way more. Get in line. Don't ever speak out. And then that scares the hell out of everybody else, including politicians. Not that I believe in our political system, because it's total garbage all around. But this is what runs the show. At least here. Who do you think runs them? Another day. Terranoses. That's my bread and butter. As in, not what pays the bills. I don't need any money. That's where I study. Merlo said that she was so upset after hearing about Carly. She has written to Goodell reminding him that he promised to change in 2016. They always promise. Everything's future with these people. Never, I will deliver now. Merlo said that she is hearing from new people every week who are pushed to the brink of suicide. Suicide. I'm going to have to start going through them. Thanks, CPC. You gave us a link. Yeah, you're so kind. Same fucking goddamn entity. Who controls them? Now, why did I say links to BC? There's bigger links than what we've gone through. Gray, obviously, Gray, which I discussed in that video a little bit, and way back when I discussed Gray and Campbell and Galliford. So Galliford used to be obviously married to Campbell. Again, it's a pretty decent video, I think, 11 months ago. Campbell, you had Gray, Seward, Galliford. You had Campbell, who was married to her, turn evidence on her to get her to what? I want to be really compassionate to Galliford, because this is how shaky shit becomes, right? The suicides. So you have to be really careful when talking about this stuff, because it can be triggering, and it's not something you work through easily. These members do. Now, Catherine Galliford, what did Catherine Galliford do? I need to grab a book. I forgot to do that. That's right. You're going to hear some names once again. Galliford. Galliford served as what? Spokesperson for the Missing Women's Task Force associated with BC Missing Women's Investigation. Commenced, which came to prominence 2011 to bring forward allegations of sexual harassment and misconduct within the RCMP. Okay. Chief among her allegations is the claim that officers in the Missing Women's Task Force neglected their duties and tolerated a 3-year delay in apprehending serial killer. Who? Robert Picton. The ties here are all very interesting. When asked to testify before the Missing Women's Commission of Inquiry, Galliford, sorry for those of you who have followed for a long time, but this is just kind of a refresher. Galliford stated that she would not be testifying against the RCMP, but, quote, rather on behalf of the victims, meaning the missing women. The individuals she named included Rob Nicholson, the Attorney General of Canada, Ian MacDonald, RCMP, and 4 officers. Who are the 4 officers? Let's see here. Oh, where am I here? How many tabs do I have open? You want to see like an average workday for me? That was, you know what, you guys have seen it. This is like tabs and tabs, pages and pages of this shit. That's I just read. Anyway, okay. Hopefully try and condense down the puzzle so it's a little bit easier. RCMP harassment lawsuit, but it's not easy. That's why it takes hours. Nova Scotia citizen. Well, the sanctimonious windbag. Yes, I'm a windbag, but these are big stories. RCMP's harassment lawsuit allegations denied by officers. Police officers named Corporal Catherine Galliford's sexual harassment claim against the RCMP have all denied her allegations in statements of defense following the lead of federal government, which has issued its own blanket denial earlier this year. You see, this is horrendous shit. Galliford, a police spokeswoman who worked on the Air India and Robert Picton cases, filed a lawsuit in May, alleging nearly 2 decades of harassment and sexual abuse by her colleagues and superiors. In addition to the RCMP, Galliford's lawsuit also named RCMP officers Constable Marvin Miwa, Superintendent Mike Bergerman. Any relation? Possibly. Mike Butcher, by the way, who is married to Lee Bergerman, is disclosure analysis. He deals with warrants. Funny that. Do we have anything to do with this stuff? Charbies? Doug Henderson, Dr. Ian MacDonald, RCMP employed physician, and Constable Phil Little, who worked on Vancouver Police Force, but was part of joint RCMP Vancouver Missing Women's Investigation. Okay, so let's just move back. So now you know Missing Women's Investigation, Catherine Galliford. You don't want her testifying. Let's see here. She also included Rob Nicholson, the Attorney General of Canada, Ian MacDonald, doctor for the RCMP, and 4 officers. Somebody happened to be last name Bergerman. Again, could just be a happy coincidence. Don't know. Don't want to say for sure because I've never been able to find that. I've only been able to find a long time ago about Bergerman. Disclosure analysis. Now, 1 month before the hearings, 2012, the inquiry deemed Galliford too fragile to testify, citing alcoholism and post-traumatic stress disorder. Who do you think gave that to her? And she's probably drinking, which she's very, she talks about. The interviews with her, again, I'm not going to try and go into her stuff too much because it is really, it's a tough thing to deal with, and I want to be really sensitive, and I applaud her for her strength. All of these people who stand up for for us, for doing the right thing. I applaud them for their strength. 3 years delay, right? So Galliford said, no, that's absolute balls. Meanwhile, she has also at the same time been abused the whole time. So finally she says, like, enough. I'm not dealing with any of this stuff. Oh, but you can't have her testify on the missing women's. The Picton. That would be very bad because she was going to testify against the RCMP for what? Ah, right, the 3-year delay. How many people do you think women may have survived? They don't want to talk about a certain other piece to that puzzle, which, well, anyway. Let's look at the Picton stuff a little bit. This book, Lonely Section of Hell, written by Laurie Shenner. Okay, Laurie Shenner was with Vancouver Police Department. Okay, page, what are we on here? 218. Okay, you can Google it. So I think it's in Google Books also. I just like things. I like hard copy books still too. Dinah Taylor. Dinah Taylor, important witness. In spring 2001, Dinah Taylor. This is all about Picton. Picton, the botched, what is the byline on this? The botched investigation of a serial killer that almost got away. Again, we're down to single person, right? Because, of course, it's only... Why is my glasses? Did I bend them or something? It's probably my broken nose. I've had it broken a few times. Gotta still get up and keep fighting. I don't stop. Okay, now, 2001, Dinah Taylor struck by a vehicle as she crossed downtown East Side. Let's see. Maybe we can give a little precursor. Hundreds of tips flowed in daily. Team followed up on several leads. Most pressing one involved Dinah Taylor, downtown East Side sex worker, drug addict, and longtime associate of Robert Picton. She lived in the Roosevelt Hotel on Hastings Street. The address would become synonymous with betrayal and death. Taylor's name had come up in connection with Picton. She had lived on that farm in various times over the past 7 years. She was alleged to have steered women out to the farm, and according to alleged sources, Picton would pay her for this service at a rate of $100 per woman. By all accounts, she was mean, violent, and self-serving. Dan Roy, a French-Canadian sergeant on loan from the RCMP in Quebec, was assigned to manage Taylor and set her up for introduction to an undercover operator. Yes, undercover operators. She was typically unreliable, and instead of meeting with Roy at the prearranged times, Taylor would be out allegedly threatening potential witnesses on downtown East Side, warning them not to talk about Picton to police or they would end up beaten or worse. Taylor personified a major problem that would reoccur throughout the investigation. So much of the anecdotal buzz around people, many of the players in this case, seemed to indicate that others beyond Robert Picton had knowledge of and participated in murderous activities on the farm. Let's read that line again. Indicate that others beyond Robert Picton had knowledge of and participated in the murderous activities on the farm. Does that sound like a solo player? Do you think it was really a solo thing? I don't know. Picton himself would indicate many times throughout his February 23rd, 2002 interrogation that there were several others involved. yet no one else was ever charged. At what point should witnesses be treated as suspects and arrested and charged? Dinah Taylor. Would the RCMP offer immunity from protection or from prosecution, to potential co-accused persons to secure statements implicating Picton? I have no inside knowledge of strategic plans, if any existed, made by investigators around these questions. But it appears that many these matters were under consideration early in the investigation. I believe if these issues had been explored more carefully, the jury's uncertainty about whether Picton had acted alone and therefore could be found guilty of first-degree murder, and the jury's ultimate finding that he was guilty of 6 second-degree murder charges might have been avoided. Can someone kill 6 people at 6 different times and say these killings are not premeditated acts? Can someone really kill 6 people on 6 different dates and say each occurred without planning and forethought? It is a difficult legal question, certainly, and one that investigators may not have known how to navigate early in the investigation. In spring 2001, Dinah Taylor had been struck by a vehicle as she crossed downtown East Side, received very serious injuries. She spent much of her convalescence at Picton's trailer, where her physical therapist would come to treat her. She was expecting a settlement from the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia, ICBC, any day, and we learned that her plan was to fly to her parents' reserve in Ontario. It was hoped that the undercover operator could reel her in before then. Unfortunately, she refused to confide in the operator or spend any time with him. Not very cooperative. Taylor left Vancouver in late February 2002. Not less than not very cooperative. Threatening people. Steve Petzel and his partner, RCMP Corporal, who? Lee Bergerman. I don't know, fucking balls. Lee Bergerman. Sound familiar? Lee Bergerman followed her, tracking her to her parents' home, where they interviewed her at length. They told her she was being considered as an accessory to the murders of these women, and it would be in her best interest to tell them what she had seen on the farm and testify against Picton in her spare time. But Taylor remained steadfast, refusing to roll over on this man, whom she considered her boyfriend. Her family urged her to do the right thing, both herself and for the missing women and their families. She refused, saying Picton was innocent. This line of investigation remained open. You think Bergerman's only ties are just the one interview? Lengthy interview? Do you think so? No, probably not. Let's look at Bergerman's husband, Mike Butcher. What was Mike Butcher? Who was Mike Butcher? I'm going to have to probably do this way. Mike Butcher. Senior disclosure analyst, and so much more. Major crime E Division. That's down Lower Mainland. E Division is BC. However, he must be working far from home because he lives down in Nova Scotia, amongst the many that seem to transfer down there. Mike Butcher joined the RCMP in 1975, worked for a variety of functions, including general duties, general investigation, drug investigation, major crime, organized crime, and operational reviewer, drug enforcement branch, staff sergeant, Now, this is interesting. He retired from the RCMP in 2002 as staff sergeant to join the Organized Crime Agency of BC, sworn in as police officer at the sergeant rank. In 2007, Mike retired again and followed his wife, a serving RCMP member. Who do you think that is? Lee Bergerman, right? to Ontario, where she had been promoted and transferred there. Mike was employed in Toronto CFSEU. We've discussed CFSEU many times here. In major case management, and upon the couple's return to BC, now works for E Division headquarters unit as disclosure analyst, performing a variety of duties related to his experience. So, and who was heading up, of course, CFSEU Ontario at that time when they moved there. But that would be Lee Bergerman. So he was a higher rank than she was. He had seniority. He had his career was motoring along. He retires. 2002. Do you notice the time that he retired? What's happening in 2002? Piggy stuff? Piggy stuff happening? He does undercover. He did undercover. She did undercover. That was what they did. So he leaves. He walks away from his seniority. She becomes assistant commissioner. He becomes a disclosure analysis. Heads up warrants. Does he have anything to do with the Nova Scotia blacked out warrants? Maybe. But it's the timing that's very interesting. 2002. Can't have Galliford, I'm trying to put the pieces together. Can't have Galliford testify because Galliford might drop a little detail. I have that video somewhere. Give me one moment, please. Actually, we'll wait. We'll wait. Wally Opal. Wally Opal. Wally! Between 2005 and 2009, served as Attorney General Minister responsible for multiculturalism as member Legislative Assembly, BC. Okay. BC Court of Appeal, resigned provincial legislature, Oh, oops, wrong page. See if I can find it. Opal, 2010. Opal was appointed Missing Women's Commission Inquiry, Robert Picton. Commission released its final report to the public 2012, including 63 recommendations. Now, appointed to oversee the new creation for the city that would replace the RCMP. Blah, 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 whatever. Wally loves the RCMP. Who headed up Vancouver Missing Women's for VPD during Picton? Gosh, there's so many different pieces here. Vancouver PD, Missing Women's. Even more more scrubbing. Missing persons department. Missing persons department. So Picton gets left to RCMP, right? Let's see if we can find her. The sergeant who was in charge of the missing persons department at the time that the Picton stuff was all going down, he was later charged with possession of child pornography. Interesting. The person who was in charge of the RCMP at the time, who was that? Coquitlam RCMP ignored Picton inquiry report. These articles are getting harder to find because there was a massive scrub going down. We can get into some of that too, but who was in charge of that? That's because the officer in charge of the Coquitlam detachment, Earl Moulton, decided that other files need to be dealt with first. Didn't need to get help from other police agencies to pursue the man that would become Canada's most prolific serial killer. Moulton. Some of you may know that last name. Just saying. So some bad stuff going down. Moulton, of course, ran away and hid. I think he retired. As soon as this all went down, he went out to Saskatchewan and retired. Mike Butcher moves over to BC. I don't know, maybe he thought that it was good to walk away from his seniority and start somewhere else and then go back later. Maybe let his wife, rise to the top since he was outranking her. I don't know. Just saying, strange coincidence. Let's see if I can find it here. Oops, wrong channel. So we got Wally, right? I might be able to find it on the internet. I'm pretty sure I put it up on my channel, just unlisted though. Maybe not. One moment, please. Oh, I don't think I've seen that. Very interesting article. Wally Opal, right? Missing Women's Inquiry ignored Hells Angels links to Picton farm. Lawyer. What was right across the street? Tara, funnily enough, used to live in Poco, Port Coquitlam. What was right across the street, Tara? What was right across the street from the Picton pig farm? Yeah. A certain clubhouse. It closed. Missing Women's Inquiry ignored Hells Angels links to Picton farm. Lawyer. Let's watch this. It's not the best quality. And there is a copy I have somewhere on my computer that's a little bit better, where you actually get to hear Wally a little better. Shut him down. Shut her down, Wally.
Women's inquiry remained contentious until the bitter end. Victim's family lawyer Cameron Ward dedicated a substantial portion of his closing arguments pointing out the failures of the commission probing the bungled Robert Picton investigation. However, the inquiry's commissioner cut him off before he could finish. Rob Smith has more.
The Vancouver Police Department should, in short, Mr. Commissioner, be ashamed of itself.
After 8 months of testimony, final arguments at the Missing Women's Inquiry began.
Who is that? Is that Wally boy? Is that Wally? Sorry about that. That's Wally boy.
Began this week, but before the lawyer for the victim's family could complete his submission, Commissioner Wally Opal cut him off.
So that subject could be disclosed.
Your extra 15 minutes are now up.
Thank you.
Lori Ann Ellis and Lillian Baudouin both had relatives suspected of being victims of serial killer Robert Picton. Both have spent every day in the front row of the courtroom. Both were furious.
You know, this inquiry is a sham, and I hope that Mr. Opal lays his head down on his pillow and all those lawyers in there tonight, that they feel ashamed for how they treated these families. It is just disgusting.
Never serve justice. Never get justice. That's the whole shameful thing.
Cameron Ward was critical of the inaction of the RCMP. He slammed the attitudes of Vancouver police officers. Sexist and racist remarks continued even after bodies were discovered at Picton's farm.
Detective Constable Lori Schenner, she described the Vancouver Police Department as a dysfunctional old boys organization. Many of her male colleagues wouldn't have pissed on the women if they were on fire.
Ward criticized the commissioner himself, stating his commission lacked transparency and was incomplete. He argued police were allowed to manipulate the hearings, and a critical mistake was made by ignoring the role, if any, the Hells Angels played.
The nexus between organized crime, the Pictons, and Piggy's Palace was well publicized before these hearings began.
It was at this point Opal had had enough and cut Ward short.
I'll speak to any member of the public who wants to hear the full submission outside.
All 8 months for what? An hour that our lawyer couldn't even get respect for, because we kept on getting interrupted. Cameron kept on getting interrupted, sorry. And it was just, it appalled me.
Give them the respect that they deserve.
The fact that we set time limits and we have rules, somehow that translates into a lack of respect. I can tell you, no one has more respect for the families than I do.
Commissioner Wally Opal was granted an extra 5 months to complete his report. At this point, the families fear it will be a report that doesn't get at the full truth. They will have to wait and see if it answers the main question behind this commission. How was Robert Picton allowed to go on killing poor, marginalized sex trade workers for so long? Rob Smith, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Nah. So Wally didn't want a certain issue raised. Why?
Women's inquiry
Okay, sorry,
remained.
I can't. How do I get out of this shade?
Contentious until the.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. The missing women's inquiry remained contentious till the bitter end, blah, blah, blah. And whenever the Hells Angels was raised, which of course had the clubhouse across the street, who was going to Piggy's Pig Palace? Politicians. They had big parties. Didn't they have big parties? Police failures? Not so sure about police failures as so much as just out and out corruption and criminality. And then burying it under the rug. I don't know, just saying. Let's go over to this article here. Wally Opal, right? We remember Wally Opal. Wally Opal didn't want certain issues discussed. Meeting with a Hells Angel, a casual encounter, head of Picton inquiry says. Public hearings at the missing women inquiry concluded this week with some lawyers questioning why evidence regarding relationships between members of the Hells Angels police, Robert Picton and his brother, Dave Picton, was not introduced or closely examined. Wonder why that would be. There's Wally. The head of the controversial public inquiry called in to examine behind the botched investigations into serial killer Robert Picton has admitted to having recently engaged in a casual encounter and conversation with Hells Angel Motorcycle Club member. Wally, what you doing? Shut it down, Wally. Uh-oh. Cops went there, too. I recently attended a public entertainment event at BC Place Stadium, Wally Opal, the Missing Person Women Commission of Inquiry Chief, in a statement emailed from his office to the public inquiry participants late Friday afternoon. During this event, I had occasion to speak briefly with a person that, unbeknownst to me, is reportedly a member of the Hells Angel. You sure about that, Wally? There's a picture out there, Wally. He might be wearing a jacket. It may have things on the jacket. Does this sound like it's a little bit of corruption? Do you think that some of the same players may be popping up in this story once again? So, Robert Picton, he was always pretty adamant he didn't do this stuff all by himself. There was also a lot of male DNA found at that place, but they never really discussed that. There was a missing biker that got murdered there. That's not really discussed. Of course, what's across the street isn't really discussed. And then you have Wally shut her down. Wally. Then you have Lee Bergerman popping up. You have Mike walking away right when the trial starts. The severed trial, which of course, who didn't testify? Oh, Dave. Good old Dave. I don't know. Who's Dave? The corruption is so deep. Galliford going to come in. What do you think Galliford knew? I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with her one day, if she was ever in the frame of mind. But I'm pretty certain I know what she was going to talk about. You can't have her talk, can you? Shut her down. And then you have a lot of the same cohorts move over because Gray, as we've spoken about a long time back, many times, Gray tanked Galliford publicly using an RCMP account, which many people wrote about it. I could search my computer. I haven't been back in this stuff for a long time, but I believe I have some screenshots of certain things. I should have anyway. Curious. Where did I put that file? Are you seeing a repeat, though, of stuff? The burying goes on. Politicians are corrupt. And you got, this time around, where's my prop? Jangus. Do you think the Jenga is going to stop? It's not like 3 politicians. I think we're in the neighborhood of 13 now. In order to get to those positions, white shirt, by and large, not to say that all of them are, but by and large, you got to sell your soul. Politicians sell their soul. Politicians get run by RCMP and criminal activities, organized crime. Is that in the video that I did last time? Stenhouse. And of course, what's overseas stuff down there, IIH coming out and doing investigations. It's all migrates. All the power couples come down. Who else is power couple down there? There's a few of them. Robert Picton is locked up forever. Robert Picton. Let's try this. Remember, you guys remember living through all that? I do. God, it was every which way from Sunday. Try finding it now. Try finding it now. It wouldn't be a long interview. It's one question, actually. I have to ask. And I don't even think it would be a yes or no. That's about it. Linda McDonald's husband, I really don't know. Again, I don't want to dox people. But the RCMP connections are obviously there on the other side. But it's important to note that they were the second organization, NST. You know, the government was very quick to move and bring in NST, but they needed some time before NST. They were scrambling, right? So who was brought in first was the Observatory for Femicide, and it all boiled down from, what was that article? The Toronto Sun article. That's where it stemmed from, and then they were right on it early in the next morning, the Observatory. O'Dear had her stuff on there about, and I know we've talked about them here a little bit, for sure. Well, where is it? And of course, those that have lots of police ties. I don't want to get too far off because there's still more on Picton. Lots of stuff on Picton. Because Picton stuff is some of the same things are happening down in Nova Scotia. So the Canadian Observatory, Manda Dale, Feminist Observatory. O'Dear has a, I don't know if she's got the early interview, the first one? And she starts talking about the board members. And the board members, of course, have lots of police ties. Dolly Mosier. Domestic violence case coordinator, Halifax Regional Police Victim Service Unit. Integrated role from the RCMP. A government charity owned. Well, I mean, Christ, what were they doing down there? Parties for politicians. And they would go, police and politicians. It was widely known that they would all go to the piggies. Piggy stuff. So, Robert Picton, who's already gone for good, right? He wrote a book. The book immediately got squashed. It got smuggled out, and I never happened to read it. I don't know anybody who has. But there are actually copies out there. Good luck trying to find them. I don't think you can. I'm sure if they come on the market, there's immediately a flag and they get bought up by government and destroyed, would be my contention. They were on sale on Amazon for a period of time. Of course, they framed it up as that he was trying to make money. I don't know. Maybe he was trying. He doesn't really need for money. He had money. So it was more, I think, him just trying to say the whole story. And perhaps it is there, perhaps it's not. I don't know. But he gets sentenced, and, you know, he's not going to see the light of day, more than likely. I don't know. He never was deemed a dangerous offender, I don't think. But he's not going to get parole. Come on, let's be reasonable here. Robert Picton, though, did something interesting late last fall. Robert Picton speaks in court to oppose, destruction of RCMP exhibits. It's an awfully strange move for a man who has no horse in the race anymore at all. Because families were saying, please don't destroy evidence. Please don't destroy evidence. And guess who came in and said, yeah, you know what? I don't want you destroying evidence either. Maybe, just maybe, he was looking for the other people also to take the fall that were involved, because there was lots of evidence to show that other people were involved. So he actually came to court and said, you know, there were movies that were made. Those all get fucking destroyed. Robert Picton movies. There were 3 of them, I think. You can find them on, which one is it? IMDb, but they're totally disappeared. Here's one. You know how many people have seen this one? 145. Pig farm. Don't want you to see it. Why? I don't know. Try, I've spoken about this shit before. Try 145 reviews, which anybody who knows IMDb knows that that's hardly made it out at all, if at all. And there was opposition. There was a movie made in Australia. It did happen to hit the market, and then poof, it disappeared too. So West Coast piggy farm, West Coast people, Galford not being allowed to testify, Campbell sewering her, Gray sewering her, using her account, getting promoted, going to, same with Darren, he gets a promotion. Who pays the price? Catherine. What was she going to say? What was she going to say? Was it going to be like the same thing that Wally shut down? Who's to know? But they certainly didn't want you to watch it. And the amount of shit that's been scrubbed off is crazy. That's I'm surprised I can't find it. I wonder if I have it in my files here. I don't use this fucking thing very much anymore. Let's try this. I only have one. Again, this is a blog, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. I always do, but Gangsters Out actually is, funnily enough, a very good source for a lot of stuff. Your alternate news source connecting the dots between politics and organized crime. Hell's Angel linked to Picton inquiry. Just as he was warming up theories regarding Picton's associations with drug dealing bikers, lawyer Jason Grattle was shut down by Commissioner Wally Opal. Here's another one. We had Cameron Ward. Now we got Jason Grattle, who was clearly perturbed. Grattle was cross-examining RCMP Corporal Mike Connor. He would be an interesting fellow to talk to, Mike Connor, lead force investigator on Picton. Connor admitted that he received a tip. Hell's Angels associate worked in the booze can after hours drinking club across the street from Picton's Port Coquitlam, BC. Property was, quote, chopped up in a meat grinder and fed to pigs. I don't know. Maybe Willie swings both ways, right? Probably going to hear that one. Connor said police knew the Hells Angels went to Picton's farm and attended Piggy's Pig Palace, nearby illicit club run by Picton and brother Dave. Dave's interesting. However, Connor said that he did not investigate the credibility of the allegation a male Hells Angel associate was disposed on Picton farm. During the trial, lab staff testified to 80 unidentified DNA, half of them male, half of them female. Never heard about the male part. Where all the chopped up piggy-fed pig men. This stunning new development in the inquiry shows us several things. That Wally, the limp fish Opal, was the wrong choice to head the inquiry. Second, the police knew that there was an illegal booze can run by the Hells Angels across the street from the pig farm. Third, the DNA from many unidentified bodies also found on the pig farm, half of which were men, and that police received a tip that Hells Angels put one of their own employees through the meat grinder and fed him to the pigs at the pig farm. These are also very significant findings. The fact that police knew Hells Angels ran illegal booze can across the street, Picton farm, Dave Picton, Hells Angel associate, are facts to be explored. This is certainly not shut down by a brain-dead idiot who has done nothing more for BC than rationalize BC's judicial incompetence. Is it true that Jesse Haddon was involved with the booze can across the street from Picton farm? Is it true that Jesse's father, Spike, was the one that caused the rift between the Haney Hells Angels and Mission City Hells Angels? Please advise. The court was told that Dave Picton knew about the bodies. Dave, who had all kinds of the same goo lying around his house. If you ever look at the evidence, he had the same stuff that Willie had. Blood in his house, weapons with blood on it, dildos in the bedside table. Again, what if this is true? Who knows? But I don't think, and I'm not trying to say that the Hells Angels were involved with it. It's just an interesting point to note, and that Wally wouldn't discuss that, and that Corporal Mike Connor said, yeah, no, they had a lot of evidence to speak to that, but they weren't supposed to look at that because Wally shut him down while Opal did that. And then you had the missing women stuff, and Catherine came forward. Timing, I don't know, strange. And then you get her tanked. How do you think they were treating her in the force? Was there any acts that coincided with that to just shut her up, treat her like crap? I'm surprised I can't find that one article. I know he was a sergeant. Charged child porn. Is this him? Yes, this is him. I recognize the name. Former Vancouver police officer faces child porn charges. Former Vancouver sergeant who used to lead the department's school liaison program has been charged with assessing and possessing child porn. John Dragani, 30-year veteran, who also used to lead the missing persons department, was arrested at his home in Vancouver on Monday, said police spokesman Tim Fanning. Dragani has been suspended without pay in April 2005, later retired, kind of like he might have been saying that he was guilty, VPD. There's no question that the allegations concerning this officer's conduct were embarrassing to VPD. But it was also an opportunity to clearly demonstrate that those rare occasions were criminal conduct is alleged against a police officer the department takes very seriously. Although Dragini once headed the department's school liaison program, police said that his duties were not related to the charges he faces. Yeah. One count of possession of child porn, one count of assessing child porn. Stems, and of course, when you do this, it's not, I think it's different than down in the States. So you just throw it all in one. Not like down in the States where every image or whatever is a charge. You hear those cases down in the United States, they're huge. Charges stem from alleged events that occurred between October 99 and February 2005. Crown spokesman Stan Lowe took so long to lay charges because the time needed to go through the computer files. The missing persons unit is also missing persons unit has been involved with the intensive investigation of the disappearance of dozens of women from the street of the city's downtown east side. Fanning said Dragini had also been involved with police pipe band, blah, blah, and mentored young officers. Ooh, don't want to know about that. So you have the VPD, which totally fucks up and has somebody who clearly doesn't seem good. I wonder if he went to the Biggie Big Palace. Dragini. Don't know. Not saying, but just putting it out there. Did he? I don't know. Passing the buck over to Earl Moulton. What happens to Earl Moulton? Earl Moulton disappears. He went over to, let's see if I can find that. Pretty sure he went to Regina right away. Earl Moulton. Actually, I think that is a good article. Maybe we can read through that. Is it that one? See what this is here. RCMP employee saw a missing woman at Picton's party in 1999. Yeah, having better luck today finding stuff than the past year. Civilian RCMP worker saw Robert Picton at New Year's party on his farm with a woman she later recognized as missing sex workers, Vancouver downtown east side. Public inquiry heard. But it's not known that Beverly Puff Hyacinth, who worked in the radio room at Coquitlam RCMP detachment, ever told investigators what she saw or anything else she knew about the Picton before the arrest of 2002. Picton was eventually convicted of 6 counts. Why? Because they severed the trial. They severed the trial and threw out 20 counts of murder. Would it be difficult to prove that he did those ones? Judge said, no. Can't have those 20. Got to get rid of them. Strange. Police found the DNA of 33 women. And how many men? Unknown. Don't want to stipulate to that one. But he once told an undercover cop he killed 49. But in that same interview, that same one that he talks about, the 49, and he was trying to do the 50, he says, I didn't do it alone. There were other people. I'm just the low-hanging fruit on this one. I'm going to take the fall for it. Okay. And of course, he was very well treated. There was an interview I had with a guy who was in jail with him at the same time as this was all going down. And he said, the commissary wagon basically would go straight to his jail cell. He had so much shit, whatever, instant noodles and crap. He had everything. Willie, getting treated very well in jail. Where did Willie ever end up? I don't know. Let's see if he says anything here. But the inquiry has always known that she lived near Picton and had known him and his brother David for years. She attended Dave Picton. Scrapping car Dave Picton. Her husband attended grade school with Pictons and son worked for them. Cameron Ward, lawyer representing. Cameron Ward also has some interesting clients, but anyway. Lawyer representing the families for more than 24 women murdered, missing and murdered women, revealed that Heise told police investigators several days after Picton's arrest 2002, including detailed trips of her to the illegal drinking establishment known as Pinky's Pig Palace. Group of 4 officers who testified Tuesday, including Ruth Chapman, who took over from Connor, and Earl Moulton, who was the inspector in charge of major crime in Coquitlam. All I can say is that if the state of Puff's knowledge, I'm sure she'd made it known to us, Moulton said to the inquiry. I put it up to you that she did. She told you, said Ward. She did not, replied Moulton. Almost 3 years later, a junior officer named Nathan Wells used another tip. So they're just going through all these tips, right? That were reported to police, 1999, 3 years later, a junior officer, Nathan Wells, used another tip about illegal firearms, Picton's farm, which led to his arrest, 2002. Same year that Butcher. I don't know, strange timing. Seems to walk away from his seniority only to come back to it when he leaves the province, working under his now head of CFSEU biker squad wife. Not that both of them weren't involved in undercover work. You following me here? You could have gone on the property in 99, said Ward. Moulton insisted Caldwell's tip wasn't enough. He said he even asked Crown Prosecutor in 99 whether police had enough evidence to obtain a search warrant, and he was told they did not. The information coming out about Mr. Caldwell, assumed by myself and many others, the information did not support the issuance of a warrant, said Moulton. Inquiry foreseen by police years before, but they didn't really deal with it. Oh, good, they're suing. 2013. Tai has interesting stuff. Been through some articles, the Project Wide Awake. Gives them all that information to extort everybody. Families of 4 Picton victims file sweeping lawsuit. RCMP, VPD, City of Vancouver, Justice Minister, Crown Prosecutors, Picton siblings accused of abetting murders. I'd like to know about the men on this one. It's a swamp, and the corruption is really bad, and people who speak out get hit with big sticks. There was a really good clip I saw of Mike Webster. I have one on my computer, I think. Webster. Let's see. Why is my Computer doing strange things. Oh, is this the systemic racism clip? Oh my God. Butcher in BC. This is a case that, funnily enough, led back to Calgary. Lansbury, Rodney, RCMP killed his bylaw officer, 62. I went through this a long time ago. RCMP Depot and E Division, of course, down Lower Mainland. And this was a crazy case. Person who murdered this person. 56 external injuries, strangulation. This Kloczynski or whatever. Oof. What happened there? He takes him over to from out of town. Beats him, strangles him, and then takes him to the police shop and then is not charged. An RCMP officer who used to work with Mike Butcher, and because this person is in the, where is it here? What is his name again? Lansby, Rodney. If you actually look at Rodney. Lansbury. Obituary. Where is it here? Where is it in that file? Anyway, I'm probably just going to end up nattering on here. But there's a lot of connections. And they're deep. And the members who speak up about stuff really get crushed. And I'm working on one piece here that's pretty big. May tie some things together. And I do hope to have that other video back up. I don't want to delete the person's comments because they're there. I've screenshot them, and those of you who did see the video, you know that they were there. But I just don't want them to be publicly known at this point in time, because I'm still trying to piece that puzzle together, which is frankly, is a shit show. But somebody contacted me in respect to some other, was another friend of Sockboy? Really? Oh, Degleshi. Oh, that's a different one, isn't it? That's not the same person. Just reading through your comments here. Just need to corroborate. Yeah, they do really. That blog does a lot of really good research, I've found. I'm not really somebody who studies all that a lot, and my focus is on RCMP here because the RCMP have a problem. And, you know, we don't need corrupt people around. Kind of like the Nova Scotia bought the property in a blink of an eye. Yeah, that was interesting. It's an interesting. Yes, that's the. Deglashi was is he UN fellow? That's I think a different kettle of fish. Not if you're trying to say the sergeant, different name. Dan. Yeah, I mean, that's gross. Again, it's the pedo stuff. That's going to get me in trouble saying that kind of stuff. Where was that other story? I was just looking at it. Anyway, I won't keep you, but just some more food for thought. The pieces tie together. They do. The connections are there. And I think people who rise to the top, the Grays, the Campbells, whilst I don't claim to know their stories, I don't. It does have the appearance that they sell other people out and do things, you get promoted for it. Just like Blundell. Blundell gets promoted. Or the Surrey 6 crew, you know, and now we've got him down there doing what? Handling that one? You trust it? You got Felix. I don't know. He's all tied into Donald Marshall and stuff. Interesting. Assume Donald Marshall. Yeah, the sacrificial lamb. Somebody who's helping out in the background wrote me about that. The sacrificial lambs. You know, and I don't want to spin off into too much tinfoily stuff, because there is that company also down there in BC. What was it called? The computers. And their computers all got seized around about the same time. But anyway, just let's try and keep the focus narrow. Just thought I'd bring you up to speed that there's the other connections, and that's the next step, I think, for now. Anyway, I do hope that you have RCMP not expunging long gun registry. That's interesting. Thank you. No, they keep files on everybody, on everything. Everybody and everything. No doubt about it. You, me, everyone. You could be the most innocent people and they're keeping files on that kind of stuff. CSE headquarters, 1 million square feet. CSE, just one part of the same thing. The intelligence organization. Then you look at people, yeah, and Paulson just runs around in the background pulling strings. Brenda will take a fall because of her racist Matt stuff. I don't think we're dealing with somebody who's really running the show with Brenda at all. Got to look older. All right, do take care, and I think I'll stop it there because I've probably gotten off track and my mind is working on some other stuff right now. So I do hope everybody has a fantastic day. Thank you very much for joining me for the streams. I do hope that helps tie some other pieces. I'm going to look at one last thing. Just make sure that one last thing. I just want to skim over and make sure, because there's maybe a couple of details that something was touched on today that I can shed some more light on. So might as well do that while we can. CFSEU, of course, which fell under who? CFSEU. CFSEU is a Lower Mainland organization, by and large, but is in Ontario, equally is in Nova Scotia. Angela, Lower Mainland. Oh, yes. And one other thing. Want to organize. I've spoken about this a little bit, and I think it would be really important next stage, because action is what speaks. Information, knowledge is power, but action, I'm big on action. We have to organize an online petition. Maybe somebody wants to take up that torch, something like a change.org thing, where we demand that the commission, maybe we'll try and take it down in the meantime, but the commission moves to a facility that can house all families, because they have the priority over anybody and everybody else in this. I don't want to see a stacked, and I think I have an idea of what the commission will approve, because they're only approving certain people. So the people who ask questions, of course, will not be on that list. And I think people who want to go off into other avenues, and those of you who know me know what I'm talking about, not just the feminist ones, but other ones as well, they will be welcomed with open arms. Please come and join us. So we can do, yes, Kendall was very good at that. And I think I'm going to try and contact. Hello, clown. You're still watching. Awesome. Welcome. Online petition to move the facility to Truro Rec Center, I believe it is. Is that the biggest facility in the area? Then that way they can house, since there's paying tens and tens of millions of dollars, snowing us, Sharpies, all kinds of nonsense. We can definitely afford, and I would love to pay for, with my taxpayer dollars, since I'm bleeding it out every which way from Sunday, because I think our national debt has now gone up by, I'm going to say 40% total ever. Anyway, can spend it on having the Truro Rec Center so that every single family can participate. Then that way we never have to have hand-picked people. We don't have to approve anybody. We can just say, you know what? All families are in. Win. Rec is huge. Okay, excellent. Make sure your petition does not contain names unless signatures or email addresses, etc., or you're just helping the enemy. They already all have everybody's name. Don't worry about that. Don't worry your little pretty head about it, little Miss O. They got everybody. Everybody. Unless you're running, even under the dark web, if you were running Tors through dark web right now, there's no way you can hide. You watch this channel, they know exactly who the fuck you are. They know who everybody is. And all it's doing is trolling and harvesting all the data. So don't worry. Nothing to be afraid of. It's all good. You can put your name on there, stand up loud and proud, and nothing to fear. Nothing to fear except fear itself. Because eventually it will become too problematic to start taking down everybody, and they do, to the tune of what, I don't know. Yeah, not even going to go there. But we have a voice. Families have a voice. Frankly, I think anybody who was associated with asking questions that got into trouble, that would be very, well, I don't know, hard PR stunt to overcome. Oops. No fear, but why would you want to give them your fucking address and email? I think all you have to do is put your email down. Like, man, it's an email. I'm not stupid. I am anything but stupid, I think. Everybody here is smart. They know how to watch themselves. But you can sign it with, and acknowledge, because otherwise, if it's just totally fake, right? Then they just say, well, you're not real, and they discount you. It's kind of like using sources that you don't name. Unnamed sources are pretty hard, especially when you rely on them 100%. Just saying. Anyway, do hope that you have a fantastic day. Do take good care of yourselves. God bless you. God bless, of course, the people in the Discord. And as always, God bless the 23. We all have their interests at heart, good morality. We just want something better for everybody, the victims, families, and even our country, and RCMP members who are just trying to do their job. Take good care, everybody.